Good evening, and welcome to this special episode of Mormonism After Dark. This is Radio Free Mormon. In the past couple of days, Jared Halverson, a religion professor at BYU, has caused a storm of controversy throughout Mormonism, especially amongst the female members of Mormonism, due to a short video he released a couple of days ago. We're going to talk about that video, and we're also going to have special guests on the show to talk about the video, Dr. Julie Hanks, as well as Britt Hartley. They'll both be joining us. We also want to make this a time when everybody can call in to express what you think about this video and this controversy. And we'll try and put women to the front. In other words, as long as we've got women on the lines, they'll get to the front. We want to make this a space for women to talk, especially tonight. And we're going to do that process in order to make that happen. So thank you once again for joining us for this very special episode of Mormonism After Dark. Well, that was a great opening I did, I think. Unfortunately, that there was that echo again with the music. It was very distracting, but it's okay. It's okay. This is a really important night, not to be destroyed by just a little bit of music there. Otherwise, I love it. So we have got some great guests on tonight. Once again, Radio Free Mormon here, Bill Reel there, and this is Mormonism After Dark. And if we can bring on Dr. Julie Hanks and Britt Hartley. There's Julie. There's
Hello.
Britt. I'm going to go like this so the fuchsias can be together up there. And the ones wearing darker colors can be down here. Boy, girl, boy, girl. Okay. Now, having said all that, if you'll give me a couple of minutes to set this up, then I'm going to ask for Julie and you, Britt, to sort of take this away. I know that you both have some experience doing this sort of thing, so that you can give us your take on what's been going on since you became aware of this. What's been going on in your lives, comments you've made in places, people you've talked to, people you've heard from, up to the present. And then we want to make it open for people to call in. And as I said in the opening, we want to give a preference to women to call in and talk about this. Also, the other thing is, and I almost forgot again. Yeah, I almost forgot again, but we've got to play the thing. So that on the off chance that you've been under a rock and don't know about this, and actually talk to someone who's very clued in, generally, to things in Mormonism just an hour or two ago who had not heard about this. So it's certainly possible. It's kind of late breaking. We got to play it, and we'll do that here in a second. And unless there's anything that anybody else has to say before we play it the first time.
Let me only interrupt you ladies once tonight, which is to just say that the phone ringing there, folks, is that we got connected to the call-in, for the call-in studio. So the number is down below, 662-667-6667. And then also the ability to just join the stream directly. I'm going to put that in the live chat now. And that'll be there. And it's also in the show notes too, both the number and I think the StreamYard link as well. So with that, I'll turn it back over to you two ladies to see if you have any.
Yes. Do you?
Let's play the clip.
Let's play it. And the other thing I want to say is that, I mean, this came together very quickly, obviously, and I reached out to Julie, and she didn't pick up, and I reached out again, she didn't pick up. So I, the third time, seriously, it does happen. And so the third time she picked up, and she was this is very short notice. So thank you to Julie, very short notice. And Britt, I know that you're equally as short. Though I didn't talk to you directly. I think that was Bill.
Happy
All
to be
right,
here.
now if we can play this video.
I am so sorry. Go ahead.
With what?
Oh, the video. I'm sorry. Here we go.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
I study faith loss and secularization and anti-religious rhetoric, you know that I'm trying to keep my finger on the pulse of people losing their faith around the world and doing whatever I can to try to resuscitate that faith. Well, as I've been studying books about this and reading articles and watching graphs and statistics, some of those statistics are pretty unsettling. To watch the rise of the nuns, as they call it, N-O-N-E-S. No, this is not people flocking to the Catholic convent. None as in no religious affiliation. I'm a part of none. And that's been on the rise since about the 1990s. It's peaking in ways that we haven't quite seen before. Well, one of the statistics that has worried me most of late comes from a survey that was done in 2023. And it's suggesting that for the first time that I can think of, more women are leaving religion than men are. That's shocking to me as a historian of religion in America. Because there was actually a great article I read in grad school called Religious History is Women's History. That women have always outnumbered men, not at the pulpit, but in the pew. And so often it's these sister saints organizing benevolent societies. Ours is called the Relief Society, doing incredible things. So much heavy lifting in the kingdom of God is done by God's daughters. I read a book once on the history of secularization in Great Britain in the 20th century. And one of the author's main points was religion seemed to collapse in Great Britain when women stopped coming to church. Men were a mixed bag, sometimes strong, sometimes weak, sometimes coming, sometimes leaving. But women seemed to hold steady, and they held the church up until they stopped doing that. And there wasn't much left to keep it afloat. Sister saints, be aware of just how important you are in the kingdom of God. Each of you daughters of God, each of you elect ladies. And then prepare yourself for this caution in section 25, verse 10. Yes, it applies to men just as much, but I want you sisters to hear it with feminine ears. 25:10, to Emma Smith, verily I say unto thee that thou shalt lay aside the things of this world and seek for the things of a better world. In some ways, I'm asking you to sacrifice, lay aside the things of this world. But in another way, I'm not asking for a sacrifice at all. It's not a sacrifice when you get more than you give. That's called an investment. And so invest in a better world by saving your stock and not putting it into this world. Those are all declining returns. You want an amazing return on investment? Then lay up treasures in heaven where moth and rust doth not corrupt. Many of you know that
I literally couldn't keep my face. Like I was doing my outside face.
Britt, did you tell me I was muted?
No.
What I was saying was, I'm not even in the same studio as you two, and I can already feel the temperature going up in here. So what did you think of that?
Julie, you want to go?
When I first watched it, it was hard to take it seriously. And Jared Halverson, like, he has a lot of great things to say. So this is not personal against him, but that video, I just sat there with my mouth wide open. Some of the things that he said the quiet things out loud. Like, women do most of the work, but they're just not at the pulpit. They're in the pews and they're doing the heavy lifting without recognition. He said it. But then blaming women, right? Women are leaving church, not because of the churches, but because women are worldly. And that, smoke started coming out of my ears when I heard that. You cannot blame women for women leaving churches. Let's look at what the churches are doing to push women out of church.
Britt?
Yeah. I think it's so interesting that how much attention this video got, because it goes to what Julie is talking about here, that like we're having as women a nervous system response to this. That Mormon women who, like me, I don't produce any Mormon content anymore. I don't really listen to Mormon content anymore. I'm off doing other things. And a group of women like me who have kind of like moved on will come back and comment on this video because our nervous systems are showing up, because he's saying so many of these quiet things out loud. Like Julie said, I have so many things to talk about that we can unpack, but just briefly, what I do want to say is that he is right as far as religious history, that the biggest change for me, who studied religious history and theology, the biggest change from when I started doing that 20 years ago to today is this thing that's happened where 20 years ago, it was true across the board in every religion that women outperformed men in religiosity, in prayer, in scripture study, in church attendance. It was in every religion across the board. That was just accepted as a universal truth when I started studying religion. And today, the very interesting thing that's happened is because women, young women, we're talking about Gen Z, is they're 30 points more liberal than Gen Z men. We're seeing this split that's happening that we really haven't seen before, where women are leaving churches more than men, and young men are returning back to churches, and the young women are going to more feminine forms of spirituality, paganism, Wiccan, things like that, in order to fill their spiritual cup. So that part of it is true. This is really new, interesting data that we haven't seen before. Everything else he says gives me a nervous system response. And it's fascinating to me. And I made a TikTok about this. The most like delicious part of this for me is that he used as his example to call women back to self-sacrifice, which is really what he's doing. Hey, like we need your self-sacrifice here, or we can't have church. The person that he uses to call us back to that is Emma. And to me, the delicious thing about this is that when Emma sees Brigham Young take over, Brigham Young being the asshole that he is, she wants nothing to do with this. She doesn't go with the Saints West. She marries a Never Mormon after this, on Joseph's birthday of all things. And so the person that he is using to call us back to self-sacrifice is a woman who said enough and didn't go with the Saints West and married someone who was never Mormon. That's your example. And so like, just that was so ironic to me. And that was so, I don't know, like just like the blindness of it was so shocking to me. And again, women are saying, and he never mentioned it, he just said women just stop doing that, as if it's like some mystery. And it's like the only thing that you're offering us is self-sacrifice. And so women are going to other places where their spiritual gifts can be explored, where their spiritual cups can be filled. And this is like some great mystery to him. And so he's going to use Emma, who left, in order to try to call us back to the self-sacrifice that they need in order for churches to run, because churches cannot function without the invisible labor of women. So I'm with many of the women who came back to comment on this video because the blindness was just so shocking. And his lack of, being able to understand why women were leaving and even give any credence to that. Like even recently from the church, we've seen, someone can tell me who said this, we need to do better for our women. We didn't even get that. And so, yeah, that's,
I think it might've been
off the
LDS
top.
women.
Yeah. Off the top. That's my response to that. But I definitely in my body, smoke from my ears had that same reaction. Mm-hmm.
What they said. Wow. His blind spots are glaring, and lines are open. And folks, if you want to come in, we'd love to hear from you. There are a couple of phone calls, but I want to give those two a sort of a chance to say about what. Anyway, both of you brilliant. He's not sensing it, and so I appreciate it. Your voice.
If they could catch us up to date, though, like when did you find out about this? And what's been going on since then?
Yeah.
I found out about it, I think the day that it posted, and there were already hundreds of comments, and I posted a comment on there, and it has like 1,200 likes or something. I mean, there have been a lot of comments now, I think in the thousands. So people keep sending it to me or commenting on my comment. And so I've just kind of been following the thread, and it's been fascinating to see who has shown up.
Can we read your comment?
Oh, of course. Yeah. Do you have that pulled up?
Give me a second.
There's a reason that it's at the top of like 1,800 comments. I think was the total last I saw.
Right there. Yeah.
And it's the one on the right.
Maybe churches need to reflect on what they are doing or not doing to push women out of the church. Women aren't the problem. Women are tired of associating with organizations that don't listen to their voices, that don't give them authority and don't offer privileges that they offer men. Church is the only place in my life where I am told I can't do certain things because I'm a woman. I am prevented from holding certain leadership positions because I'm a woman. I am prevented from blessing others' lives through performing ordinances because I'm a woman. I don't see my gender reflected in the leadership of the church or in general conference talks. Women are leaving religion because it's so steeped in patriarchy. Women aren't leaving churches for worldly things. Women are leaving because we are no longer tolerating sexism and systems that limit opportunities to serve. Churches are the only place left in my world where women are denied opportunities because of gender. That's why women are leaving. It's not a mysterious phenomenon.
Wow.
Thank you.
Put on a t-shirt. I'll wear
That's
it.
at 1,192 likes as of the time the screenshot was taken.
And a lot of other LDS or LDS, post-Mormon women came and commented on this. So that was kind of fun to see. And this nuanced Mormon, there were some other, I think it was MacArthur Krishna, and I'm trying to remember. Yeah, some of you have them here.
Yeah, I've got a bunch of them.
Yes, and Bill did go to that work, and I had done a few of my own, but then I thought we'll put that as something to fill a lag, if there is any lag in people who want to call in.
Right.
Can I just say something? He mentioned the horror that people are leaving religion, but that doesn't mean people aren't spiritual, right? Is it a bad thing that more people are saying they don't belong to an organized religion? I don't think that means that they're just valueless, aimless, hedonistic people, right? I know a lot of people who have left religion who are very spiritual. And so I guess I don't buy the, oh my gosh, if people leave religion, the world is falling apart, because I think spirituality is still a part of many people's lives, even after religion.
And we have data on that, on the people that are leaving, the women that are leaving, they will still say that spirituality is very important to them. So they are not abandoning spirituality. We see that in the data. And sometimes even God, this isn't even an abandonment of God. The majority of people who leave religion still also believe in God. Mm-hmm. And so for me, I saw this first, I think, on the Mormon Stories podcast community. And I made a TikTok about it because there's been a lot of discussion about Gen Z men returning to religion. What does that mean, and why are they doing this? And it's this interesting phenomena. And kind of what my TikTok was about is I'm not concerned at all that there's kind of a wave back to religion that we're seeing with Gen Z men, because so long as women aren't there doing invisible labor, that is going to be a blip in the data. That's not a lasting statistic. And so I think one of the reasons why so many people commented on this video is it almost feels to me the same, it feels in my body the same way it did when I was called a lazy learner for leaving the church, when I'm the least laziest learner that I know. So to be called worldly or less than, or that I'm not sacrificing enough just because I found another place where my spirituality is thriving, where my cup is filled, where my voice is valued, where my gifts are valued, to just have someone look at that and call that worldly and not good enough. There's just something just deeply painful about that. And it feels just like when I was kind of called a lazy learner, when I was doing so much, when I felt like I was pouring myself into learning. It just feels like such a mischaracterization characterization that it's hard not to like have an emotional response to that as a woman. Like we did give everything. We wanted to stay. It was our whole life. We poured our lives into it. We got up on Sundays. We made the toddler bags. We had the sign up sheets. Like we poured our lives into this. So then call us worldly when we find spirituality outside of Mormonism that actually fills our cups. And we're just talking about even getting back to like the basic, like we don't even have the rights of as Mormon women of what Mormon women had in the early church. Like we don't even have the same rights that we had 200 years ago. Like just our ability to have our own budgets and our own curriculum and be able to heal each other and tend to each other. We don't even have like what they had 200 years ago. So we're not asking even for progressive like gender stuff. We're talking about, can we at least get at very minimum what Mormon women had 200 years ago as a start? Like we're not asking for the world here. And then when we weren't heard, we went and found, you know, our spiritual cup being filled somewhere else, and then we're just kind of called worldly, that we didn't give enough. I give everything. Anyway, and so that's the part of it that's just very emotional for me.
I know we're going to get to these phone calls. I do want to bring up something. Hopefully you'll comment on this later, because this video was like okay to the middle. I mean, it wasn't terribly offensive. And then right before the middle part, I went back and I looked at it. Then he makes the unfortunate comment about the pews versus the leadership. But then the startling thing to me was when, like, you know, Satan in the temple endowment, he breaks the fourth wall and starts addressing the sisters of the church directly in an exhortation of some sort. Was that shocking to you?
It was shocking to me, like how he did that and how he used Emma as kind of his pawn to do that, when Emma would have not appreciated being used in that way. She would have had shit to say about that. So I didn't appreciate that. But then also not to even give, sometimes we just will get like a crumb of acknowledgement, like, hey, I know that sometimes we have needed to do better. I felt like he didn't even give us like that crumb of acknowledgement. It was just come back and self-sacrifice because we can't function without you. And then even like the way that he uses his hands, it's like, women support the church. It's like, yeah, we're here doing this work, you're here, you know what I mean, benefiting from all of it. So even just like his body language of how he was explaining it was just super off for me. It just tells me that, and he said this at the beginning, that he's tracking all this data, he's trying to figure out why people are leaving. But then right after that, he says, I'm doing this so that I can try to revitalize faith, which means I'm only listening to you to find ways to reconvert you back to the faith, which means you're actually really not listening. Yeah. And so but that's clear. Like that's clear in how he talked about this issue and how he was calling women back, that he actually didn't listen.
Julie, what did you think about Jared Halverson's "I have a word to say concerning this people" moment?
Yeah. It felt very familiar. Like men exhorting. It was, I kind of thought, who are you to be counseling me? You have no you have no authority over me. And so it felt really condescending when I listened to it. Like, who do you think you are? And then I realized, oh, he thinks he is in a position to exhort and bring women back to the church. On the self-sacrifice, Britt, I think that message we hear from men a lot, and maybe men need to hear it, but women don't need to hear it. Part of what I do in my therapy practice is try to undo that self-sacrifice message, because that's what women default to. And so it's like, I'm going, the therapist in me is going like, no, don't go back to that mode of, deny yourself and just, give it all to the church or to your family or whoever.
Yeah, it does so much. It does so much damage, and in my own coaching practice too. And what's interesting about the women who are leaving, if he would have listened to them at all, what spiritual places are they going to? They're going to places where they have authority. Even if it's just with themselves. We're not even talking about authority over others. The reason that women are flocking to paganism, mythology, astrology, tarot, witchy stuff, all of that kind of thing, and it's very Gen Z, female oriented, all of that space, is because there's not a man between you and the divine. There's not a man between you and your own voice and your own intuition. And so this is why women are flocking to those places. They're not usually going to other churches, where they're not leaving Mormonism and going to another religion where man stands between them and God. And so we have to kind of, this idea that I'm over you, going to call you back to self-sacrifice to the point of self-denial, and expect you to just hold on and just like white knuckle that till you die so that you can get rewards in the next life, so that we men can benefit from your invisible labor. Women are going to find spiritual paths where you're not standing in between them and their spirituality and their divine and whatever, concept of divine they resonate with. That's where women are going.
Yeah. I just want to say, Julie, you mentioned it being the hand motions and stuff. I just wanted to ask if you three thought it was, there was almost a degree of performativeness with it. And then the two of you, I want to ask you that. And then I want to ask the two of you, noticed that it was every piece, like every part of what he did came from a place of having blind spots and not seeing what you guys are pointing out. Was there one part in particular that stood out above the rest?
That's a good question.
Well, one thing that comes to mind is he said, we need you, women, you're important. Who's the we? Men are right. And if you need someone or someone is important, they don't need to be told. They don't need to be like, they know because they're treated like they're important. And so that felt revealing to me. And I noticed that, like, oh gosh, if you have to tell me I'm that important to you, I'm probably not that important to you.
Yeah. For me, it was more when he was going over the data, and there was just such a lack of self-reflection. So what we should do when we see data is look at this data and what is this telling us about the situation? What are these women's voices saying with their feet leaving? What is the data? How can we self-reflect on this data as men, as husbands, as people in the church, as the church in general? And there was just not even in the entire thing, there wasn't even like a half second of self-reflection of why this is happening. It was just him feeling like he's in a position to call women back. We need you. We're important. And not at all. There wasn't even just a moment of reflection for why this could be happening. And so it makes me feel less valued, because you don't even care why I left. So why would I want to come back? You don't, obviously this data did not prompt any self-reflection for improvement. So why would I want to come back? Now, if he had gone through that data and said, I'm concerned as a husband, I've noticed that I benefit from my wife's invisible labor. So on Sundays, I am doing the toddler bag. I'm more aware of it. We need to be doing better for our women. Even if it was like within the doctrines of the church, he was trying to do that, I'd have a lot more compassion with that, because he would have looked at the data and it would have been an invitation for self-reflection. But it just wasn't. It just was so condescending. He didn't care why we left, so I'm not going back. Yeah. I'm gonna have to go on a walk after this to calm down before I go to sleep.
And he didn't offer any insight into what churches can do. It was straight to women. Yes. You're leaving because you're worldly. It wasn't, I wonder what, even curiosity about, I wonder what churches could do to be more inviting to women. It was women, you're worldly, come back and do the labor in the pews and not at the pulpit.
And so there's a lot of like protecting his own ego in that. Like, if you are listening to people in order to revitalize their faith, right? You're not allowing their story to touch you at all, then that means that you're really just protecting your ego, right? Like you're protecting your ego and what's important to you and centering yourself. And so all of this just is ego. And then just kind of like that Mormon voice of how he does it, just the combination of it was just so triggering for the Mormon and ex-Mormon community. I mean, I've seen people in those comments that I haven't seen in the Mormonish community for years come back and make a comment, because it was just it was just so off. And I hope, the hope is, and once in a while we'll see this. I think even Brad Wilcox was able to do this, where he got a lot of heat for things that he said, and he did some self-reflection, and he said, I'm learning, and I hear you, and even even though there may be limitations to that, like at least he had the integrity to be able to say that in that moment. What I'm hoping is a week from now he comes on with the humility to say, I did, like if he came on next week and said, I totally missed it, and came back and said, I'm listening, and these are the things that we can do better, and I really misread that, and whatever, I would instantly be moved from this anger that I'm feeling in my body to compassion, like because it takes a lot of humility to do that. And so he still has that opportunity. He has that opportunity to hear the cacophony of voices, and hopefully have it call him to some self-reflection. I really don't expect perfection. And I don't expect him by tomorrow to be like the most progressive gender rights person that I know. Like, I really don't expect that. We all grow at our, and we're all learning and growing and all that stuff. But I hope he does make that move. It would really make him respect. It would make me respect him more if he had that moment of humility.
Yeah, and I don't know what to do with all the things the two of you have pointed out that are problematic, that are blind spots of his. I don't know what to do when I combine that with, and I just want you guys to notice this the second time we play it when we get further into the show, but notice how performative it is. He has every part of his spiel worked out with hand motions that have been practiced beforehand. He's telling a story that he's rehearsed. And I'm struggling to make sense of like sort of a place that someone does that. Is it
like a savior complex?
There's something, huh?
Hmm.
So I don't know. I see something like that. So anyway, I just want to say thank you for all the stuff you brought to the conversation, because there's things he's just not seeing, and you guys have great words to it to help people understand what it feels like.
My fear is that, like, there's a fork in the road here. When you get called out on social media, which I have, I've done apology videos. I've missaid things before. Like, there's an opportunity there to say everybody is wrong, or these people are really triggered and angry, or they have the spirit of contention, or there's like these trite things that you can say, or there can be this call toward, it can act as a mirror. And I've seen people change when they get called out on something. I've seen people change in positive ways, and so I will be curious to see over the next few weeks what he decides to do with this outpouring of women's voices saying, you really misheard us here.
Well, it's been up for 2 days. It's still up, isn't it?
I'll give him like 3 weeks.
That sounds generous.
I'll be generous. You don't need to no, I don't expect anyone to drastically change overnight, but there is an opportunity for some basic self-reflection here, that you've made a covenant to mourn with those that mourn, and you have not listened to the people who have mourned. You only listen to them in order to kind of have your ego be able to save them, or to counsel them, or exhort them, or revitalize their faith, which is then more about you. And I'm not asking really for the world here. I'm asking for just basic discussions about, can we just get the rights that we even used to have, and also showing me that you have listened to female voices, and that you're not just kind of protecting your ego.
I think he's signaling that the church is ripe for a church-wide walkout. They would cave.
There was a comment by, I believe it's Faith Matters, who sponsors his podcast, and they did say thank you for the comments. You can email. We're going to compile to compile something. I don't
okay.
remember what it was. We're going to compile, please email your comment here. And they were going to do something with it. So there is an openness to feedback. And I want to say, like, I'm guessing that his heart is good, right? He just has blind spots. I've heard him speak before, and he has a lot of wisdom, a lot of great things to say. And so I always want to give people the benefit of the doubt, unless there's a pattern of ignoring feedback.
Unless they're Jacob Hansen.
Yeah, he ignores feedback.
Yeah. And same from me. Like, I would be instantly moved to grace and compassion, and not expect you to change overnight and any of those things, so like, if they're compiling this and they're going to look at it and read through it, and it's going to lead to discussions with him and Faith Matters and all of that. Like, there have been many times where I've been called out on a blind spot on social media, and I've come out and said, this is what I was wrong about, and I'm sorry. This is what I'm listening to. Thanks for calling that out. Like, I don't expect perfection from him, and it's hard to speak publicly. It is, because you can't see your own blind spots until it gets called out, and I have a lot of compassion for that. I really do. I just hope in the next few weeks that this leads to conversations that then talks about that blind spot in productive ways, and then that's fine, and then I am on board for that. That's fantastic. I'm not gonna sit here and pretend that I don't have blind spots and just judge someone else. I just know that the people that I most admire are those who will admit, I missed some things here, and thanks for pointing that out, and I'm going to work on it. That's like so much grace. Like, I'll offer all of that. But just, we haven't seen it yet, but I have hope. I have hope that his heart is in that place and that he can do that.
It's not the Mormon thing to do.
No, it's not, because, we don't,
Apologize.
the church doesn't apologize, but
That's
hopefully
right.
he as a person can apologize.
I'm sure he can. Jared, you got 3 weeks. You hear? 3 weeks.
3 weeks. That's my time limit. And then I wipe my feet off. Though I wipe the dirt off my feet in your general direction.
All right. Hopefully we saw those phone calls hanging in there.
Yeah, let me grab one of them here. This is Michelle. Michelle, are you there?
I am.
How are you?
Hello.
Welcome to
Great.
MORMONISM After Dark.
Well, thank you. Great to see all of you and hear all of you. And at first, I was bummed that this seemed like a planned event. And then as I heard the topic, I mean, this is an outstanding show tonight, guys. Wow, this is just really powerful, and I'm really glad I got through. So I just kind of wanted to make a comment about, everything that I was hearing when I heard that video. And I got to be honest, I have just never heard anything like that. At first, I was just so angry and just feeling like this can't be real, what I'm listening to. This is the first time I'm a resigned member, and this is the first time that I've actually been proud of having resigned. I've never felt proud, and it feels like such an ugly thing to feel. I don't want to feel proud, but wow, this was just, but then after I got past the anger, my heart just hurt. To hear someone in this day and age, in any religion, outside of religion, talk like that. And then when I think about Mormonism, where I really went was, this is just the most patriarchal talk I've ever heard in the church. It was so blatant and so, I felt like I was back in the history that I've been reading about the church, like in that space of just total patriarchy. And what I was hearing is this complete putting responsibility on women to uphold others, to uphold the entire church. He was putting the responsibility on women to uphold this entire church tumbling down, and sacrificing self and chastising women essentially for not doing this by quoting the scriptures to Emma, chastising women for not upholding the entire church. And I'm sitting here thinking, for all the years of the history of this church, men have had all the power. They could have been changing the course of the history of this church for all the years that they have been in power. They've had the power. Women do not have the power in this church to change this church. Even though I don't believe it's true, let's just go there for a minute that it's true. Women, we could get together, we could change this church. It would be so different. We do not have the power. Men have had the power to make these changes, to accept people for who they are, to help people get in touch with who they are, to bring women to the front, men to the front, children to the front. They have had the power to change the church's entire trajectory. And for him to come on, and as the church is crumbling like a house of cards, because every decision that a man has made in this church has led to where they are now, to then turn to women and say, this is your fault. Buck up, sacrificed. You get this church back together. Well, you know what? I will gladly come back to the church as a member if you let women come and lead this church to a different place that it has never been before. True inspiration, true thinking about humanity and people, and getting rid of the harm that is done. Even then, this whole thing is bullshit. This whole church thing is bullshit. But man alive, I'd come back in a heartbeat if I could get together with women like Dr. Hanks and Britt and all the wonderful women that I hear out there, and the men. Man, you get the podcasters in the ex-Mormon space together with the women that are in the church and out of the church, we will change this place. We will feed those starving children with the billions of dollars that my personal tithing money has gone towards, that my entire family of 8 children and 2 parents have paid to this church. We will feed starving children. We will put families back together. We will pay them when they can't get abortions to take care of their children and love them. We will bring them mental health services. We will bring them education. We will bring them love and humanity. Bring it on. And I'm taking up way too much time. The last thing that I want to say about this is bring it on. This is the first time I have heard, so this is the good part, right? Let's cheer and clap for this. The good part is, finally, I heard a talk where I was not gaslighted. I finally heard them speak truth. For once, I finally heard truth. This is exactly what they have believed for generations in this church, in our patriarchal society, this church, other churches, right? He is finally speaking the truth that it is up to women to uphold the entire course of humanity. It is up to us, but we have no power to do it. And this church has believed that from the very get-go. And so I say, bring it on. Bring the truth, brethren. Speak your truth. I'd rather hear the truth than be gaslighted, because I want everybody else out there who is suffering within the church to finally feel it. Feel what this truth is that you believe in. Is this really truth? I mean, I want people to find their truth. I want women to find their truth. Just find it and feel what this man said in this interview. And where does that leave us? All right. I've talked way too long. Thank you very much for listening.
Thanks for calling.
Thank
Michelle.
you.
Michelle makes the point. I think if you could get a sustaining vote and say, let's put the women in charge for a while, and the $293 billion will go to a great cause. It'll get divided up in ways that are responsible and healthier to humanity. And what those 15 men don't know is if everybody just took a stand today and said that, then that would be the votes across the entire fucking thing. Anyway, caller, thank you.
Yeah, Michelle, thank you so much. And you're right.
Thank you.
This video by Jared Halverson, colossal mistake. Not only did he speak the truth, And the shocking thing for me is it's 2025, and I would have thought there would have been some movement, but apparently not in the last 200 years. Not only did he speak the truth, he also signaled their weakness.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Michelle's right. The system can break whenever people sort of take their choice back.
It reminds me a little bit of Chico Okazaki. Is that how you say her name?
Yes.
You know, just remembering her feelings of betrayal when the proclamation came out, and feeling like, I wish we were told. We would have had things to add. We would have had things to say. I wish we were told. You know what I mean? It just like listening to her talk just kind of reminded me of that betrayal, that we didn't want to go anywhere. I didn't want to leave. By the time I left, and a lot of people don't know this, by the time I left, I wasn't allowed to pray in my ward. I wasn't allowed to hold a calling. I wasn't allowed to speak in my ward. And eventually I just looked around and realized, like, I can't even be human here. I can't even participate at all. And so
You're a
I found
ghost.
I found somewhere else to go. I didn't want to. I would have kept pouring in 10 hours of my week into the church. I was a seminary teacher. It was my whole life. I would have been happy to keep making toddler bags. It's not that I was worldly. It's not that I wanted to just stay at home and be lazy. It's not because I didn't value, I don't value service or love. There are things that I am willing to sacrifice my time for. There are people and things that I'm willing to sacrifice my time for. But to be then treated like that, and then to be expected to just die and completely prostrate myself, and then expect it to be enough, and not burn out, and not be seen, and not even be able to speak by the time I left. There was just, I didn't want to go. You forced me out. And I just wish he could have heard that like, we didn't want to go. Like, we poured ourselves into this church. But like the caller said, there are so many women who, listening to that talk, are so proud of their choice to leave. So if his goal was to bring women back, he made the people who left feel proud that they left. And then the people who are still in are looking at all of these voices and feeling this in their body, and it's more likely to drive them out too, because he said the quiet thing out loud, that we need you for your invisible labor, and then be quiet about it. And so whatever his goal was, it's really having the opposite effect. Someone who was never proud to be out of the church had a welling sense of pride that I have my own autonomy, and I have my worth. And that I don't think was his goal.
Jared Halverson says to the women of the church that they need to invest in the next world and not in the things of this world, to seek for the things of the next world and not of this world. There have been some comments about the Mormon conception of the next world for women, and why that might not be something they'd be interested in investing.
That's a good
in.
point to add. Yeah.
Yeah. Do you want to comment on that?
That is a good point.
And I'm throwing it to you to say whatever you want about that point.
Julie, you want to go?
Yeah, from what we know, it's not supposed to be that great for women, and we don't know that much about it. But if it's just eternal childbearing, and still being controlled by, or presided over by men, nope, no, thank you.
Yeah. It's really interesting with my clients, and I'm sure Julie will agree with this, is it's interesting to sit with men who are leaving or have left the church. And I would say the majority of male clients that I have that are Mormon who left, usually for historical reasons, but sometimes other reasons, will say that they were grateful for many aspects of their growing up in the church. They were grateful for Boy Scouts and Mutual. Maybe it kept them out of trouble. And there may be some kind of struggles with certain experiences that maybe they would have wanted to have. But overall, most of the male clients that I have say, I don't really regret that time. It was working for me, but it's just not true. So I'm leaving, and all these things. And when I work with female clients, it's a totally different experience. I have to, like, a lot of my job as a spiritual director is attending the funeral of these women who are weeping that they gave their entire life to this thing and didn't benefit from it because they were doing the self-sacrifice thing for the next life. And then they realized, the church isn't true or whatever. And so all of that time was for what? Like, I killed myself for what? And the mourning that goes with that, like, so much of my job is attending the funerals of women who never got to be, because they got married and had children before they even knew who they were, and they just had this life of self-sacrifice. So they're 40 years old, they have no idea who they are, and the funeral we have to attend for that is much different than usually with my male clients. And then when you talk about Mormon heaven, I've never had a female client mourn that they're losing Mormon heaven. They have mixed feelings about it. They were like hoping that things will turn out okay and that it's better than what we've been told. But you want me to be eternally child rearing, but also
quiet and invisible, and don't talk to your children, and your children can't talk to you.
Yeah. So you want me to have the children and not talk to them and like be silent and leave them alone, which, like, motherhood is my highest calling, but somehow, like, that's going to be taken away from me too. And like, that's my heaven. And so, like, I have had 0 female clients in all of my coaching say, I'm really mourning this concept of Mormon heaven. Man, I'm just, I'm so sad. I'm so, like, I was so looking forward to be a faceless, voiceless mother, one of many, because, Prophet is sealed to 2 wives. Oaks is sealed to 2 wives. So one of many, silent, not even able to talk to her children. Like, nobody's sad about that. Like, there are other aspects that we can be sad, that we can be sad to leave, especially, community and other things. But no one's ever shed a tear over I'm giving up Mormon heaven. So this idea that, like, it's incentivizing enough, like your riches in the next life, even that is problematic. And it's just so tone deaf. It just tells me that you've never listened to women, especially in regards to polygamy and this wrestle that we have with Mormon women in our hearts of, am I going to have to share my husband in the next life? You can tell that he's never actually sat with someone who has had those feelings.
You guys are both pointing this out. And this is what I wrote down to sort of define it. Might the powers that be, the folks that have always been in charge, might they have a vested interest in needing to stop you, the women, from theologizing about women? That allowing that leads to something they don't want, which is that women reclaim some degree of power back in the church by being open about what it means to be a woman in the eternities. And so they just squash the conversation. And you're hitting on all these things that it bumps into you. And anyway.
Yeah, it does feel like participating in a male fantasy.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah, I think helping women claim their own power is what triggers so many Orthodox men to be angry with me, right? Like, don't have women think for themselves, do things for themselves, figure out who they are and what they want, because then they won't play this role for me. And it's quite threatening to the men in power, right?
It reminds me, I was listening to a clip of a podcast, and it was like a 45-year-old guy saying, like, I prefer to date women who are in their early 20s because they haven't been brainwashed yet, or something like that. And it's like, yeah, I'm sure you do. Like, I'm sure you do. I'm sure you can't handle a woman who's a full human, and so you're dating women 20 years younger. It kind of just sounds like that, that we can't let women into their own power. But the thing is, like, as angry as I feel, or as angry as Julie feels, or all these comments, if to go on Bill's thought experiment here of, like, if women had more authority and voice in the church, would we do the same thing to men that men have done to us? And we have data on this, from matriarchies and things like that. And the answer is no. The answer is no. And Julie says it more than anyone, that matriarchy is not the same as flipped patriarchy. And so actually what matriarchy, or at least women who are seen as full humans, they are more aware of the needs of men, of the male loneliness epidemic, of of the needs of our boys. We're mothers to girls, but we're mothers to our boys too. And so this isn't a revenge game. This isn't me and Julie getting angry and like one day we'll get our power and we'll show you what's what. It's like, no, like let us help and we'll help you too. Like we'll help you too. And so that's the painful part of it, is that you're keeping us from power and keeping us from the voice, but I actually have the power to help you too and save you from yourself in some ways. And so this isn't even a revenge thing. And I think sometimes men are afraid that women will treat men the way that men have treated women, but historically that's not a justified fear. And when you get voices that are more communal and get more voices in the table, it helps everyone, including men. Yeah. That's what we're asking. Like, let us help everyone. And the answer is no. It needs to be in the proper channels. I mean, it needs. And this reminds me of. Does someone remember the general conference? I think it was Oaks who talked about like faith healings and like women need to make sure they're going through proper priesthood authority. Do you remember that? I think it was like 2009 or something like that.
Like energy healing.
Energy healings.
Yeah.
Energy healings. Right. And so it's this interesting thing where like women are told in the church that you don't have that kind of healing power. You don't have, you don't have the proper authority to tend to other people. And so we said, okay, we'll go over here and do this Reiki stuff so that we can attend to one another and help to heal one another and do this body work with each other. And then they came, no, you can't do that either because it's not in the proper priesthood authority and channels. And so it's this thing where it's like, we're trying to help you. And then we go over here and now you're still mad at us for using our spiritual gifts over here. And then because we're not using you in your proper priesthood authority and giving you, a place in your kind of male fantasy that you're the most important. And I'd forgotten that happened.
Wow. Yeah, this is kind of like the captain of the Titanic calling all the women in the lifeboats back to the ship. The thought occurs to me.
I've got. Do you want to go? If you want to go to the next phone call here,
please. Yes.
I think this is Lila. Lila, how are you doing?
I'm good. Can you hear me?
Yeah. Loud and
Great.
clear.
Hi, Lila.
Happy to be here. Hi, RFM. It's really great to watch Britt and Julie doing this tonight. I'm loving it. And I want to just add my voice. I did make a comment along with all the others when I saw that video. And I think there were a few things that really stuck out to me that really bothered me. And one of them was him using Emma as an example that we need to follow. And what that did was remind me that, Emma was treated horribly by her husband, who spoke as God and told her she would be destroyed if she did not go along with polygamy. And a lot of it had already gone on behind her back when she finally found out about it and was furious about it, like any woman would be. And yet she's reprimanded and told that she's going to be destroyed if she doesn't go along with it. From her husband's mouth, as though he's speaking for God. Now that right there is spiritual abuse. That is manipulative, and it is horrific. And for him to put us and say, you need to think of Emma, get into Emma's shoes. That's how you need to behave. Basically, he's telling women that if we don't pull up our bootstraps and get back in line and continue being treated the way that we have been and not walk away, but we need to just suck it up. Otherwise, we're going to be destroyed. Basically, that's what he's saying. And that we'll end up like her. If we, Emma, actually, the poor thing, it breaks my heart whenever I read about her and what she went through and the children she bore that died. And her husband's out philandering around the town and she has to put on a brave face and just suck it up. It's horrible. And for this man to I could not believe he did that. I could not believe he did that. And then on top of that, His attitude was so condescending to women. We've been putting up with this for centuries, okay? And I've only lived for, I'm 60, almost 64. But that's long enough to be a member of the church for all those years and to be treated the way women have been treated. We are subjugated. We are told we're put on this fake pedestal to placate us and patronize us into subjection, telling us that we're so special and we're so righteous and we're so good. So we better toe the line. And this man, I cannot believe how tone deaf he is. Is he married? Does he have a wife?
Yes.
Has he never talked to her? Has he never asked her how she feels? Has he never listened? Has she ever had the courage to speak out to him? I shudder to think what their marriage is like. It's horrific. And this needs to stop. When is it going to stop? You know, when Britt was saying that, you know, women don't want to get in power and then treat the men like the men have treated us. Although that's what they might deserve, that's not our goal. It's never been our goal. Most women are motivated by kindness and love and, you know, generosity and service and all of those things. It's in our nature. And for that to be kind of manipulated into an expectation, you know, it's just so bad all the way around. I just was so disappointed and so disgusted by it. I was so angry. And it went on for, you know, the last couple of days. I've just been seething under the surface because I can't believe that this is where we're still at in the church. So anyway, I'll stop. But I just wanted to chime in and say thank you for doing this, all four of you.
Thank you, Lila.
And I agree with her that to me, him using Emma was the most blinding thing, because even people, like the church is very careful with how they use Emma. Like they don't prop her up too much because she's a problematic hero. Like she's a problematic character in church history. So we have like a few pictures of her and Joseph like holding babies and things like this. But like they're very careful not to use her too much because she's problematic in church history. And so for him to just use Emma as this kind of pawn to bring women back to a church that she left was one, to me, the most blinding aspects, because I've seen church apologists say similar things that, you know, we need women and all these things and have it be condescending, but even they will be careful when they use Emma. They've learned, they know to be careful when they use Emma because she's problematic to use as a hero for women. And so for him to use it like that just was so, it was it was almost strange. It was almost surreal for him to be using him in that way, or her in that way.
It's so funny. I was talking to somebody earlier today on the phone and I described it as not just offensive. It was weirdly offensive. It was weird and offensive.
Yeah. Because he knows about Emma. He's done some church history, and so it seems strange. It does seem strange. Yeah. Go ahead, Julie.
I just want to know what feminine ears are. You know, when he said listen with, was it feminine eyes or ears? What
ears?
Ears, yeah.
I want listen to this with your feminine ears, sweetheart.
And I just have never heard that before. And that just struck me as really odd. And then something else we haven't talked about is he said religious history is women's history. And I'm like, have you read scriptures? Like how many women are mentioned in scripture? Religious history is not women's history.
Did that strike you as an empty platitude?
Absolutely.
And I don't care if he's just citing the title of a paper he read in grad school, which is what he says it is. He's still citing it for a reason.
Because there's not a more current one.
Yeah, he wants to say the title because that's his message there.
Yeah, but I think that's highly problematic to say that religious history is women's history, because I haven't learned much about women from religious history.
See, what makes it history, my understanding, Dan Vogel and anybody else can correct me if I'm wrong. I'm just a small town lawyer, not a historian. My understanding of history is that that's what occurs when things get written down. So there's prehistory, which is before anything gets written.
They're telling you in the damn title, it's his story. It's history. It's his story. It's written by men, for men, about men, and then he talks down to them and challenges them to find the truth in it anyway, without acknowledging
for the next life that sucks also.
I was just going to say that to conclude my thought, which I'm desperately trying to hold on to here, that if there's little to nothing written about women in the church, then they're not part of the history. Literally, that was the point I was laboring toward.
Yeah, good.
Have I mentioned how much you're looking like Don Johnson tonight, Bill?
Well, thank you. It's my favorite jacket, so I like pink.
I'm actually very underdressed, but one of the gifts to my authentic self since leaving the church is that I don't dress up anymore for anyone under any circumstances for any reason. So I will be here always in my sweatpants, and that's okay. You know what? Because nobody cares. But you guys all look fabulous.
Well, thank you. We want to make sure that you knew there was a dress code before the show started.
Even if you would have told me there was a dress code,
oh yeah, not that you had to
I would still be in my sweatpants.
But that you wouldn't, be caught off guard or something and say, "I wish I brought."
That's
Yeah, Britt knows me well. That's my reason for saying it.
Yeah, this is what self-love. Yep. This is what self-love looks like for me post Mormonism. I don't dress up for anyone.
If anybody discards anything you've said tonight because you're not wearing your prom dress, right? Absolutely absurd and ridiculous. Rewind this just to hear what the two of them had to say. It's the shit that is pointing out the blind spot. They're describing it in perfect vocabulary. Just listen to them. All right.
Can I be petty for a half second?
Sure.
Because I don't
of
like.
Course.
All right. If Julie says it's okay, then it's okay.
Oh yeah, it's healthy.
I'm not at all like criticizing his appearance, because like that's really gross behavior and I don't want to do that. It's more just like the face that he decided to put on here. And so like what would have made this, I feel like, more palatable for me, like this face. It's not his appearance. Like I'm not being that guy that like, oh, he's ugly or something like that. It's that you did it with a smile. You did it with like this, like kind of like almost scary, like eyes really big, like happy kind of face. And it's like, if women are leaving and you're sad about that, then like maybe check in with your face. Like maybe like your face is not telling me that you're hearing us and you're hearing why we're leaving. And it hurts you that women aren't feeling like they have a place in the church. If he would have had some of that emotion, I would have had a much different emotional response. But for him to be condescending like this is so strange. Like it just kind of amplified the reaction for me. And again, it's like not his appearance. It's just this kind of like beneficial patriarchy, saying it with a smile. And then that like the smile and like the big eye happy face is going to kind of like cover, it's going to feel like benevolence, right? I'm going to say these to you and it's going to feel like, I'm so benevolent. It's going to feel kind, and that almost feels like manipulative or disingenuous, condescending. Whereas if he would have been like, man, it just hurts my heart to read all these stories of women who don't find a place in our church, and that would have shown up in his face, I would have had a totally different emotional reaction. So yeah, I'm not loving this face that he chose. But like, Mormons are very good. Like we have a mask face, like, and for women, we have a mask voice. Like, thank you, brothers and sisters. Thank you for and so, it's this weird, it's by cloaking the poison with this kind of saccharine, sugar face, it just made somehow the poison worse for me.
Britt, you're going to have people, and you're going to be able to tell sort of where they're coming from, because you're going to have people who clip that and go, she's just making fun of him. You're not making fun of him.
No.
You're pointing out.
He's a perfectly fine-looking human being.
Yeah.
It's just that you wrapped that language that was so offensive to me
Yep.
with a face of benevolence and a face of joy, and that was like made it worse for me because that's really painful and condescending that you're gonna it's like I'd rather saying horrible things with a smile. There's something worse about someone saying horrible things, or someone like, not that he's like beating me to death over here. I'm quite safe in my little she shed over here, but like someone beating me with a smile is different than someone beating me not with a smile. Somehow, like it just somehow it feels different.
Oh,
It
sure.
feels
That's
like
why Richard III famously says, I can smile and murder whiles I smile.
yeah,
Oof.
and that's just like it's like next level
Oh, yeah.
benevolent patriarchy. Like, I'm going to control you and I'm going to sell it to you with this face. And it's like, ooh, yuck.
Can we play it again? Would that be okay?
Oh, yes, of course. We got to play it again.
Play
it, Bill.
I'd love to hear it this time with all sort of the commentary to sort of
face.
contextualize this. Let me get the sound on. Let me get the sound
Sort of
on.
like a Chucky face.
Yeah.
Study faith loss and secularization and anti-religious rhetoric, you know that I'm trying to keep my finger on the pulse of people losing their faith around the world and doing whatever I can to try to resuscitate that faith. Well, as I've been studying books about this and reading articles and watching graphs and statistics, some of those statistics are pretty unsettling. To watch the rise of the nuns, as they call it, N-O-N-E-S. No, this is not people flocking to the Catholic convent. None as in no religious affiliation. I'm a part of none. And that's been on the rise since about the 1990s. It's peaking in ways that we haven't quite seen before. Well, one of the statistics that has worried me most of late comes from a survey that was done in 2023. And it's suggesting that for the first time that I can think of, more women are leaving religion than men are. That's shocking to me as a historian of religion in America. Because there was actually a great article I read in grad school called Religious History is Women's History. That women have always outnumbered men, not at the pulpit, but in the pew. And so often it's these sister saints organizing benevolent societies. Ours is called the Relief Society, doing incredible things. So much heavy lifting in the kingdom of God is done by God's daughters. I read a book once on the history of secularization in Great Britain in the 20th century. And one of the author's main points was religion seemed to collapse in Great Britain when women stopped coming to church. Men were a mixed bag, sometimes strong, sometimes weak, sometimes coming, sometimes leaving. But women seemed to hold steady, and they held the church up until they stopped doing that. And there wasn't much left to keep it afloat. Sister saints, be aware of just how important you are in the kingdom of God. Each of you daughters of God, each of you elect ladies. And then prepare yourself for this caution in section 25, verse 10. Yes, it applies to men just as much, but I want you sisters to hear it with feminine ears. 25:10, to Emma Smith, verily I say unto thee that thou shalt lay aside the things of this world and seek for the things of a better world. In some ways, I'm asking you to sacrifice, lay aside the things of this world. But in another way, I'm not asking for a sacrifice at all. It's not a sacrifice when you get more than you give. That's called an investment. And so invest in a better world by saving your stock and not putting it into this world. Those are all declining returns. You want an amazing return on investment? Then lay up treasures in heaven where moth and rust doth not corrupt.
One new thing came up for me, which is this weird thing where he's obviously, being so condescending. But then when he's talking about the data of women in churches, the data is showing that women are steady, women show up, women do the work. He's saying out loud, women are the steady ones. They're the rock. The men are just really up and down, just like really wishy-washy. Sometimes they show up, sometimes they don't. And we know this. And if you've ever run a joined young women's, young men's event, you know that when the young women are in charge of doing it, it's a perfectly run, fantastic activity. And, it's a mixed bag when the young men are involved in these, it's something that
If
we
you're
laugh
lucky.
about in the church, right? And
Yeah.
so it's so funny to be in this place of such condescension and judgment when he's saying that women are the steady rock. If we are the steady rock, then why are you so scared of us being able to participate and have our voices heard in this religion? If we're the ones that are steady, we're not the up and down ones. Like the men are the up and down ones. We're the ones who are steady. And yet we have to pretend that men and the priesthood are kind of, the rock, and they're the ones that need to make the decision. And sometimes you even get oh, women are too emotional and flighty. It's like, no, he's saying that the data says the opposite, that the women are the steady ones. And yet we need you to be providing invisible service with no benefit to you, at least not until the next life. And then it's, whatever it's going to be in the next life. And it's so funny to hear him say that and then not come to the conclusion that, well, why aren't women's voices valued more if we are the steady ones? And we are. Historically, we have been. We're not now because you didn't give us a place. And we were putting in our, we were the steady ones.
Oh, that makes
Oh,
me feel
Julie,
so much better.
Julie, you're muted.
It wasn't me this time.
I know, I didn't RFM. What struck me is not once did he ask why in any of the studies, why women are leaving, why. And you mentioned this before, Britt, but the ability to self-reflect or reflect on what am I contributing to this? That's a mature response to puzzling, do I have a part in this? And that was just absent, right? Does the church have a part in this? Yeah, why? And he just assumed it's because women are worldly and we're seeking things of this world and not for the next life. And yeah, that part really bothers me.
It bothers me because if we're the steady ones,
Yeah.
why are we not seeing a return on investment for our time in this church? If we're going to use investment language, and we are, he said out loud, the steady ones across the board in religion, then why are women who are usually the ones who are the rock here, why are they not seeing a return on investment? It would be just such an obvious move to make, and it just was totally foreign to him, just the most, which I wonder if that would have come out if this would have been a 30-minute video or a 2-hour video. I hope to give him the benefit of the doubt that we just got a blip of maybe his more full views, and that I'm willing to listen to more if he were to expand his views there. And so I'm willing to give a little bit of benefit of the doubt, and I hope that there's more there than just him missing that obvious move into reflection on why women aren't seeing their any kind of return on investment in this life or the next life. But in this clip, we just didn't see any indication that there was any of that thought going on. But hopefully it's, leading to conversations where that can happen. And I'm not so petty that I would rather him just get heated online forever for this. I'm not that petty. I would rather this turn into a meeting with Faith Matters where they're talking about this and looking at this, and that's what I hope will happen because of this. I'm not just going to be here just railing on another person because I want to be petty. I want it to turn into change because he so missed women's voices, and it's hurting women, as we saw.
Bill, I saw somebody below. I think their name was Chris, and then they're not there anymore. That we're trying to zoom in, or
yeah, somebody did come down below, but then they left. I do have one phone call in the queue.
okay. And Chris, if you can zoom back in. Sorry that it takes us a while to get to you, and I apologize if we had you waiting too long and you had to leave. But please come back if you can.
Yeah. So I think this might be Roxy. Is that the name?
Yes.
Yeah, Roxy. How are you?
Very well. How are you guys tonight?
Good,
I've
good.
loved this. I've laughed so hard at that listening to the guy talk. Oh my gosh, Britt, you really said that very well when you were talking about how he looked, and we went back and watched it again, and I laughed my tail off at. You were correct, Britt. I love you, dear. You're adorable, and I have to listen to you almost every day. Just a little bloop of you. I love all of you. Don't get me wrong, but Britt is.
But I'm the best.
We get it. We get it, Roxy.
So,
You get half a vote.
RFM,
Britt.
you're
We all have some ego too.
yeah.
Go ahead, Roxy.
Okay. Okay. I wanted to tell you that. Okay, so I joined the church before RFM did, and my husband and I joined together. And for the first couple of years, we were really active, and we went to the temple. We did all that good stuff. He stopped going to church, and I stayed very faithful. We had 5 children. I did all my callings. I did all the things I was supposed to do. I stayed completely active. I was promised by stake presidents and bishops that I would make it into the celestial kingdom. And I was promised over and over that he would clean up his act and he would become a part of that. And of course he did not. Later on, it was getting pretty obvious that he wasn't going to come around. He became more and more stagnant. Long story short, he didn't do that, and the bishops were still telling me that, you can be sealed to another man. And so when I left the church, my eldest son was very disappointed in me, and he and I were having this little conflict over it. And he said, well, you could be sealed to someone else. And I said, this is a delightful thing. I've spent my whole life active in this church, dedicated to every bit of it. And now I'm going to be the 57th wife to some guy whose first wife isn't even going to want me to be a part of his family. Thank you very much. I'm turning my tail and going a different direction. Of course, he's very disappointed to this day, and I honor that because I raised him that way. But, in reality, after all of that, I got nothing anyhow. So, hello, all of that for nothing. Although, I have beautiful children, but yeah, so it's craziness to think that the guy that was talking to us with a smile on his face, telling us that we're the backbone of everything, and we get no honor in it at all out of being the 57th wife in a cattle herd. It's ridiculous. I'm sorry. It's just ridiculous.
Roxy.
So, Britt, I will continue you.
Hey, Roxy.
Yes, dear.
They put you in double binds still to this day. Like, that's what you're noting, right? Like they put you in Sophie's choices. No matter which choice you make, it's a losing proposition. But you're told told to take it anyway.
Yes. Oh, sure. Yes.
Hey, Roxy, don't go anywhere yet, but I wanted to ask Britt about whether what Roxy was talking about touched upon those funerals that you were talking about, because it took me a while before you got done describing them for me to realize you weren't talking literal funerals.
No, it's if your mother were to die, or your child were to die, we kind of accept as a society, like if you take a couple weeks off of work, you need to grieve, you need some time. And yet when we lose our third parent, which is, the Mormon God, or we lose we lose our sense of identity, in the sense that I'm 40 years old, I gave my life to something that I now no longer believe. We have no kind of ritual in society to be able to stop and say, this needs to be also grieved, and this also needs to be mourned. We need to have a funeral for the woman who never got to be. She never got to fully have a life. She never got to see how her career could have been if she had decided, not that there's anything wrong with becoming a mother, but there's this grief that women have where they say, I love my children, I adore my children, and yet I'm still grieving that I don't know who I am outside of them, and that part of me never got to really have a life. And that deserves its own funeral. Like, we need to write letters about that and burn it, and we need to cry, we need to scream, we need to tell a friend about it, we need to give a gift to that self that never got to be. And so a lot of my spiritual direction work will be things like that, witnessing that, especially for women. And with my male clients, it tends to be not as devastating. That's not true across the board. I have many men that will grieve about the time that they spent on their missions, or they were really damaged by patriarchy. But overall, the majority of my male clients will say, I appreciate Mormonism for what it did, and now I'm ready to move on, is the majority of kind of my male clients.
And you feel like that's because it does more for men than it does for women.
Yeah, men get to be a person. They get to have a voice. They have leadership. They get to be told, what are you doing? What are your career? Even if they do have children, they're still developing. They're networking. They have friends. They have goals in life. They have they're just able to be full people. By the time I'm 12 years old, I'm writing letters to my future self who's going to get married about what kind of husband I want to have. Like, that's happening very young. And so men just get to finish ego building, where they have identity and voice and presence, and they get to just grow to be a full person. And women, often have to do that outside of the church, or with Julie as their therapist.
Yeah.
Or
any thoughts from you, Julie?
Yeah, I love what you're saying. Oops, sorry, my mic just unplugged. Hold on.
Okay.
Pause.
It reminds me of the line from Greenleaf Whittier that my mom used to recite to me, which is the only reason I know it. Of all sad words of tongue or pen, the saddest are these, it might have been.
Yeah. Britt, I totally agree with what you're saying. So much of my work with LDS women is grief work. Grieving what could have been, grieving lost time, lost opportunities, lost dreams. So I'm with you. And I'll sometimes have women set aside like an hour twice a week, where it's just like, you just honor that grief and cry and scream and write letters and talk to someone and just really mourn the lost opportunities. But I do have male clients who feel stunted in that, like, they were funneled into a corporate job when they were really an artist, or they, right? Like, there's a version of that for men where they weren't able to fully express themselves because of that burden of being a provider, or like, I had to be an attorney. Oh my gosh, sure. Like my dad, RFM. Yeah. So there is that, but I do think women are expected to be more of a role that's all encompassing of wife and mother, and men get to be those and have careers and have dreams and have leadership in the church. And so, yeah, I totally agree with what you're saying.
Yeah, that's good to add.
If you guys saw how the sausage was made, maybe you would stand your ground and say, no, we can do better. We're gonna start doing this a different way. It sort of takes that to turn up systems sometimes, doesn't it? But sometimes you have to have an insight that the other side doesn't see, and you've got to let them sort of recognize it. But also your own side has to sort of wake up a little bit too, because they have a lot more power than they think they've got.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's sometimes, go ahead.
No,
That's
no, you go
sometimes
ahead.
that's sometimes a hard sell, and I do want to recognize that for women, unpacking patriarchy is a very empowering process. There's a lot of grief in it, certainly a lot of grief, but stepping into your voice and power. The example that I use all the time is like I was 35 years old before I ordered my own, like the pizza that I like in my family, because it's just so natural that I just kind of order what everybody else needs and you're not even thinking of yourself. And I was 35 years old before I said, I'm going to order peppers and pepperoni and pineapple. And I don't give a shit that nobody else in my family is going to eat it. They can pick off stuff for once. I'm going to like, I was 35 years old before I just ordered pizza. Do you know what I mean? And so for women, often unpacking patriarchy can be an empowering process. And I understand that for men, sometimes it's a harder sell because it can be a humbling process. It can give you sometimes guilt or shame over the, blind spots or the ways that you were raised or the privileges that you may have. And so I understand that sometimes I'll have women say like, I'm so excited about unpacking this patriarchy thing, but I can't, like, my husband's not really excited about this. And it's like, yeah, it's not as fun from the other, from the other way around when you're kind of doing, that side of the journey. And so I understand that can be difficult to continue to look at that mirror, whereas women unpacking patriarchy can find it to be very empowering.
Well, and men benefit from it. They're not in as much pain generally because of patriarchy, or
Right.
more not as overt of pain. And so women have more motivation to unpack it, where men have more motivation to kind of protect the system because they're benefiting from it.
Mm-hmm.
Is there anyone on call, Bill?
Yeah, we've got phone lines full.
Let's definitely go to some phone lines, please.
Okay. I know that at least, some folks need to drop off here in a few minutes. So we want to certainly excuse them when they need to do that and recognize that. Would love to keep the conversation going for as long
We
as
are at an hour and 30 minutes. That's usually the limit. I mean, we can keep this going till, for 2 hours. But you have been both very kind, Julie and Britt, to come on. And if you need to go, we'll certainly understand.
Yeah, step away. Okay, this is Tabitha, I believe. So is that the name? Tabitha?
Yeah, that's correct.
How are you doing today?
I'm all right. I have to be honest. I've been struggling. I'm pretty bitter. I've given up so much for this church. I've given up education, career. I've given up a lot, and if they'd realized for me, and I think for many people, the first question I asked was, is it true? And then when I realized it's not, the second question I asked is it healthy? And hearing him talk makes me realize it is not healthy, and it never will be healthy. He talks about sacrifice, and he talks about how if you sacrifice, you will get more than you give, and he is just full of it. We give more than we ever get as women in this church, and that is never recognized, and it never will be. And Britt, hats off to you that you have faith that he'll be like, you know what, maybe I was a little off. I don't think he will. I don't think this church will ever recognize what women do and who they are as human beings. Anyhow, and I appreciate what you guys do. I appreciate that there's a space, and I appreciate your insights. But yeah, rough thing to hear, especially right now in my life. So
thanks for the vulnerability.
Yeah. My heart's with you.
Yeah, I can hear the emotion in your voice, and it for these 2 days, it made kind of our lives a little harder. You know what I mean? It feels so opposite of Jesus, and even though I find myself outside the church at this point, like Julie, I take a lot of I still have a great love of Jesus. And he really talked about a yoke being easy and a burden being light. And he talked about love, and he talked about flipping tables of the institution. I bring all of that with me. I haven't abandoned that. I take that with me where I go. And so to hear, just just sacrifice more, just do more. None of us women, none of us felt Jesus's message of, the good news of the gospel is that your burden becomes easier and your yoke becomes lighter. We felt this heavy weight of you need to die in your self-sacrifice here. And then maybe in the next life, things will be better. And that feels so heavy. And you can hear in her voice the emotion of how that made life harder. And that just tells me there's no Jesus in this. That just tells me, I mean, by your fruits, you shall know them. It just doesn't feel like Jesus to me. That's it for me. I do have to go. So good to see you guys. So fantastic to hang out. Yeah.
Any of your stuff?
I'm hanging out at No Nonsense Spirituality. That's all my platform stuff and the book and all of that. And but had to come back to Mormon land and hang out with you guys for this one. Had to come back to my roots for this one. And just want to thank and shout out RFM and Bill, who saw this video. And it almost makes me emotional. It really does. It really does. That RFM's first thought was, I'm going to call Julie. And Bill said, I'm going to call Britt. And there's something about that when I see ex-Mormon men, I'm emotional talking about this. Wow. When I see ex-Mormon men who have used those comments that we've talked about as a mirror, and they have that thought of like, there should be women in this room for this conversation, and they made those calls. It does do something incredibly healing for me as an ex-Mormon woman. It really does. It's not missed. It's not taken for granted. It is so appreciated that you guys thought to call us, because that is obviously not the first thought of Mormon men, of like, I need these women on this conversation. I need their wisdom. I need their voices. We don't get that as Mormon women. We don't get that phone call. We don't get those invitations. We're not in those rooms, in the rooms where it happens. And so for you guys to think of me and to think of Julie, it doesn't go unnoticed. It really doesn't. And I so appreciate being here with you guys tonight.
Yeah. RFM gets the credit. He initiated the conversation. So kudos to you, RFM.
Yeah. Thanks, RFM.
Bye, Britt. And I need to head out. Britt, great to see you.
Okay, and you're going
I have an early flight tomorrow morning, so I need to finish
packing.
Thank you for being
here, both of you.
Oh.
Julie, is there anything you want to say about where people can find your work at?
Yeah, drjuliehanks.com, wasatchfamilytherapy.com for therapy in a lot of the Western states, and social media, Dr. Julie Hanks, at Dr. Julie Hanks. And I do therapy, I do coaching, and I just love working across the Mormon spectrum. I work with active Mormons to post-Mormons, but Mormons are my people, and I love you all. Just RFM and Bill, great to be with you. Thanks for inviting me. And next time I will answer on the first call, RFM.
Okay, thanks.
Take care.
Bye.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Bye.
Yeah, take it easy.
Well, now all the stars are gone. Are the people on the phone still going to want to call in?
Well, I think regardless, rather than anything we could add to that, let them have the final word. But we definitely should finish off taking whatever at least female callers we've got in the queue. And if anybody does still want to come into the show, we can certainly go for another 20 minutes or so. And we really like to give you guys a chance to share something. So, all right, I've got. What's the caller? What's the name? Oh, that one hung up.
You see?
Sorry.
Julie and Britt go. Everybody.
Hey, that's it. That's it. That was the end of it.
Yeah.
Sorry. They were hitting it out of the park all night long. It was just one of those where you just keep trying to throw them softballs where they can respond to something and add another point about a thing, because they were killing it. Well, Mr. Radio Free Mormon, we're at 9:40.
I mean, all the phone calls are gone? That was it? That was the last one? And they hung up?
They did. And so those ladies left, and as you should expect, nobody's in the queue.
There's your ball game.
There it is. Call it.
Wow. Okay, so I'll go ahead and I'll try and close this out. Is that okay, Bill?
Yep,
Is
that'd
that
be
what
one.
you're thinking? Or should
Yeah.
I call you Don? It's in Don Johnson.
Just DJ would be great.
You're looking good, my friend. I approve of the scruffy look.
Thank you.
Okay. Everybody, thank you so much for watching tonight. We've got a live chat, and the live chat closes down when the show closes down, but we've got comments below. Please feel free to express yourself in those comments, however you feel about the show or things that were said or things that Jared Halverson said. Oh my gosh. I hope that he does okay through this, because right now he has worked his way up through the Institute program in Nashville, where he's a director of the Institute program, up to being an associate professor of ancient scripture at BYU. And by associate professor of ancient scripture, we actually mean associate professor of modern scripture parading as ancient scripture at BYU. That's where he's the associate professor of. So thank you so much for watching tonight. It's been a trip. We'll see how this plays out. Maybe we'll have a review, a story on it on Monday on the newscast, just to see what's happened. If that video is still up by Monday, which I'm going to lay you odds right now, Bill, it won't be. It'll be taken down by then. That's my bet with you. Thanks for watching, everybody. I hope you have a great weekend. Please join us Monday for the newscast. And until then, everybody have a great night. Thanks so much for joining us. Bye-bye.
I hope he leaves it up.